Day 1219 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 1,015,000 military personnel losses, absolutely staggering, which includes an additional 1,100 in the past day. Then as for hardware, 1 tank, 7 APVs, and 48 artillery. Now headed straight to the map, with an odd bunch of activity found today, starting with Russia's gas and chemical refining plant in the Nizhny Novgorod region, seen ablaze, and an episode that marks the second incident in just a few weeks. And with events like these truly becoming a serious slap in the face of the power of the Russian Federation, unable to protect against these types of incidents, which is again demonstrated in the following matter, where Ukrainian kamikaze drones targeted certain unspecified Russian military facilities in Moscow overnight. Explosions rocked the city, with air defenses actively engaged. The mayor reported 2 drones shot down as authorities imposed airport restrictions in response to the attack. As per the following flight radar image, we see civilian passenger aircraft in Russia's main economic hubs of Moscow and other cities becoming increasingly subjected to the creeping in of regularly grounded flights, thereby feeling the impact of the war waged on their neighbor, leaving Moscovian citizens now unable to rely on air travel, just as has been the case in Ukraine since day one, 1,219 days ago. But then where things really lit up overnight was all the way over in Russia's far east Zabalsky Krai region, where an ammunition depot surprisingly caught fire earlier today, with firefighters unable to immediately extinguish the blaze due to the ongoing detonations of munitions. There were some reports of drone activity, but it's more likely it was sabotage or simply poor handling of munition stores. And in fact, Zabalsky Krai has been no stranger to fires recently, as a fierce forest fire featuring walls of flames of up to 150 meters or nearly 500 feet were seen near the town of Atamanovka, which have been ongoing since the beginning of the week, in fact slightly before. Gee, somebody call in the army to help with that. And it was just a week earlier for the capital of the same region, a huge fire at a landfill had been ongoing for several days, with locals reporting the air was poisoning the city dwellers. But hey, when you've put such a tight lid on your state media apparatus, safety standards in Russia can quite easily become an afterthought. Then headed back across on the map to roasting Rostov and Tagnarog again, would you believe it? Second night in a row, with additional reports of inbound UAV activity, said to be at least 15 explosions recorded. Then we'll head closer to the border, Kursk, where apart from suspected HIMARS rocket artillery strikes on a military base in Korenovo, we also came across related updates of another large Russian convoy traveling from Crimea and Kherson for further deployment into the Kursk and Sumy front lines, which may be in response to the losses Russia has experienced on the Sumy incursion front most recently. But even before those events, the Russian army was already sending weekly batches of manpower and material to the North Front for the last 2 or 3 weeks. This time, however, no self-propelled artillery systems are being sent. Instead, it's mostly just manpower. So as for a bit of napkin math, no artillery plus manpower equates to one likely outcome: further attritional meat grinder waves of attacks, and has been such a strategy that at all levels of the Russian army appear to be still far too accepting of. Then speaking of both HIMARS and Sumy, more operations in the Sumy region with HIMARS rockets covering enemy artillery positions, including that of a towed D-30 howitzer and 2 of the first-gen 2S1 Vozdika self-propelled guns. And based on the previous segment, doesn't look like they've got anything to replace them with. Then further into the Ukrainian map, where Russians have been advancing upon every front all over the map in their minds, which is a Kremlin talking point that is repeatedly repeated. But in reality, over the last day, anything of the sort has been largely isolated to the Shevchenko front, with Russian forces grinding their way adjacent to the Dnipropetrovsk region and at the points of here, here, and here. Now, the reason for the Russian armies grinding it out is multifactorial, but not the least of which is due to changes in Ukrainian defenses, with no more massive bunkers waiting to be spotted and pounded, because after hard lessons learned in Bakhmut, for example, all that time ago, and as per recent AFU Chief Sersky comments, the armies switched to small scattered trenches and fox burrows hidden in the forest strips, impossible for drones to hunt down en masse. So while the Russian dream is of breakthroughs everywhere, Ukraine's new defensive web is all about vanishing into the trees, waiting for every advance and making it cost more than it's worth. Then also, as for this location and at this time, Ukraine's 20th Army Corps is making its debut at the front, sending 4 fresh brigades into the fight around southeastern Donetsk, or at least the front lines of it. They're moving in to relieve the battle-hardened frontline units, signaling a serious rotation, bringing new strength and energy just as it's needed most. Rotations like these have always been tricky throughout the war for both sides, sometimes leading to gaps or confusion or lost positions at the front, but now Ukraine's latest move, with new units already operating in these areas, shows a more coordinated shift, with past lessons clearly shaping how these handovers happen now. But of course, then from the Russian angle, these days it's not so much about rotation as it is about feeding the front in a one-way direction, if you know what I mean. Then somewhere in the east, and worthy of a Ukrainian hardware news update section, as Ukraine has quietly rolled out its own high-tech aviation-launched glide munitions used for strikes against Russian forces, meaning it's already a bona fide reality and not just a test. Local engineers have modified cost-effective standard munitions, installing special precision guidance kits, where these new smart devices can now soar up to 60 kilometers from the release point, homing in on targets with impressive accuracy, and doing so with an approximate payload size of 500 pounds, but will likely become even larger later on. The range is also expected to stretch even further as well, with 80 or potentially 100 kilometers in their sights, and that's already in the works for these longer-ranged ER extended range editions. Now, if these weapons look familiar to you, that's probably because you've seen something just like these before, as the kit operates similar to the US-made JDAMs. Now, internally speaking, for the Ukrainian Air Force, demand is already soaring for these new munitions, with an upcoming goal to produce 100 per day. 100 per day! Just to put that in context, Ukraine receives in 50 French hammers per month, which is another type of precision guidance munition with a similar range and payload that has already been met with phenomenal success in the field. And at a time where it's only been in the last month or two that we've seen such a remarkable uptick in close air support sorties, with these weapons playing a significant role in enabling Ukrainian forces to strike high-value targets more effectively and respond quickly to dynamic frontline conditions. It's about to become a dark day, many dark days, for invading forces operating at, say, 60 kilometers or 38 miles from the front contact point. Then headed across to the news, as Ukrainian President Zelensky visited Strasbourg in France to attend the Council of Europe, an international organization dedicated to human rights, democracy, and the rule of law across 46 European countries, where he just inked a deal to set up a special tribunal for Russian aggression against Ukraine. The goal: finally hold senior Russian officials accountable for launching the war, something the ICC can't fully do. As for the enforcement mechanism, the whole approach is about breaking through the usual walls of immunity. The tribunal taps into the Council's legal reach and global backing, inviting countries and organizations well beyond Europe to join the effort by allowing for joint investigations, sharing evidence across borders, and coordinating extradition requests, and even freezing assets across multiple jurisdictions. The tribunal isn't just symbolic, it's a direct move to tighten the legal net around Russia's top decision makers and is a setup that is designed to make evasion significantly harder, or, at the very least, life a lot more inconvenient for offending countries. I imagine Russia's top brass will start to feel trapped in Russia for the rest of their days. Then headed across to a rapid Ukrainian hardware news update segment with so much coming out. Starting with the Ukrainian drone group Wild Hornets, who has fielded a new air-to-air interceptor FPV quadcopter capable of reaching altitudes of over 11 kilometers or 36,000 feet, and seen here operating at airline cruising altitude over southern Ukraine. These drones will increase Ukrainian aerial defense capabilities to go after Russian mail drones, or medium-altitude, long-endurance drones, like that of the somewhat rare Russian four-post drone, as per this semi-recent example from back in April, seen neutralized at a lower altitude. Then also in the skies, Ukraine's new propeller-driven interceptor drones are also reshaping air defense. Meet the Strela, which chases down Russian Garin UAVs at up to 350 kilometers per hour, designed to replace traditional surface-to-air missile defenses and even manpad solutions, coming at a much lower cost than those platforms. Then for the last in the rapid-fire segment, and following on with an almost identical piece of hardware news, introducing the Mars Interceptor. Another in Ukraine's latest homegrown air defense innovation pieces, this robust drone is engineered specifically to intercept and neutralize incoming Russian UAVs through direct collision. With impressive agility too, the interceptor can execute maneuvers exceeding 4 Gs, enabling it to effectively engage in aerial confrontations. Additionally, its advanced terminal guidance system employs AI algorithms in the final attack phase, calculating the optimal intercepting trajectory to ensure precision targeting. So in all of these examples, what we see here is part of the landscape of what the future of air defense looks like. Then headed across to a BRICS news segment to round off the video today, as the BRICS summit in Brazil approaches on July 6th, where it's an unusual case of who's not coming this year, most notably President Xi and President Putin, leaving a big gap at the meeting meant to showcase unity. The whole pitch behind BRICS is to challenge Western dominance and build up new shared bloc hegemony, but with heavyweights like Xi and Putin not attending, so the R and the C in BRICS, it hardly looks like a seamless alliance. There's also talk of a common BRICS currency coming up, there's always talk about it, but it's difficult seeing it ever getting off the ground. After all, to replace the world's global reserve currency, the greenback, it would take some serious trust and stability in the new BRICS note, which is difficult given the situation between some of the major players within the BRICS membership alliance, such as China, India, and Russia, all clashing over borders. For instance, China redrawing maps to include Russian land, or when it's the long-running border disputes between India and China, showing that the dream of a united BRICS seems as distant as ever. And where I haven't even mentioned the main difficulty for next month, where one of the main members, Russia, has a leader who, for instance, cannot even travel to this upcoming summit after Brazil was unable to provide assurances that Putin wouldn't be arrested under the ICC warrant out for him, that Brazil's government is obligated to enforce under international law. Just problems all around. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, support, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!